The title of this speech is Why Division of Children and Family Services Should Be Responsible for Investigating Child Abuse Cases Better. The general purpose of this speech is to persuade my audience. By the end of my speech, my audience will realize that DCFS makes too many mistakes when investigating child abuse cases, and those mistakes result in children being taken from homes that they should not be taken from, or they result in children being left in homes that they are not safe in. I want to help my audience to realize that many children are being taken from homes where nothing was going wrong, and other children are being left in homes where they are being neglected or abused, and DCFS should be responsible for the mistakes they make in investigations that lead to these things happening. Around 1,600 children died within 1 year, even though DCFS was involved in their lives or had investigated their families for neglect and abuse, according to Connor Friedersdorf in 2014. Many other children are wrongfully taken from their homes where they are perfectly safe and loved because DCFS accuses parents of doing things that they did not do. I am one of those parents. The topic of this speech is the many reasons why DCFS needs to investigate child abuse cases better and more thoroughly. I have personal interest and experience in this topic because my son was wrongfully taken from me 4 years ago for something that I did not do. Recently, my rights to my son were terminated, and the entire time I have dealt with DCFS, my caseworker was working against me instead of trying to help me better my situation in order to get my son back, which was supposed to be her job. You should care about this speech because these things can happen to any family. Many innocent parents have lost their children forever because of something they were accused of but did not do. And many innocent children have lost their lives because DCFS left them in a home where they were actually being abused and neglected, and this is not right. My hope for this speech is that I will be able to persuade my audience that DCFS is doing wrong and something needs to be done about it to save the many innocent parents and children that DCFS is affecting in the wrong ways. In this speech, I will talk about the many innocent parents that lose their children, the many innocent children that lose their lives, and the many mistakes that DCFS makes in these investigations, as well as the things DCFS does wrong knowingly. I have had conversations with many parents that lost their children to the system for something they did not do. Too many parents lose their children to foster care for something they never did, and it is unfair to the parents as well as the children that they are being separated. Parents that have mental issues are having their rights to their children terminated based on just one incident, according to Seth Wessler in 2014. Apparently, DCFS also receives a cash reward for adopting out foster children, which causes myself and many others to feel that they are terminating parents' rights just to receive that money. From research I have done in the past, DCFS apparently receives $10,000 for each child adopted from foster care, and $13,000 for each disabled child adopted from foster care. My personal story with DCFS started in 2012 when my son was 8 months old, and it lasted until February of this year when my rights were terminated. I was accused of doing something that I did not do, which is why my son was taken from me, and there are many things that I was made to do that I shouldn't have been made to do. I was forced to go to therapy for something that happened to me when I was 5 years old, that I had already been to therapy for and overcame. And my therapist told me that I was one of her best clients because I was very open and honest. She discharged me, according to her, because we ran out of things to talk about. According to DCFS, she discharged me because I wasn't willing to change, which caused that to be a thing that I did not successfully complete because of what DCFS said. I was also forced to do a bonding assessment with my son, where I had to drive 3 hours away to do this assessment. It lasted only 30 minutes with me and my son having to do things that did not make sense. There were 4 different things in envelopes that me and my son had to do in front of a therapist, and one of those things was feeding each other food. Another thing was rubbing lotion on each other. I've never heard of a mother and a son that rub lotion on each other, but from that bonding assessment, apparently they found that my son and I did not have a bond. which we actually do have a very, very strong bond. My caseworker kept adding things to my service plan, which is what they give parents to complete in order to get their children back. And every time I would complete something, my caseworker would add something new to it in order for me to never finish that service plan. I voluntarily attended Narcotics Anonymous meetings because I had a drug addiction, and DCFS said that that didn't count as treatment, but then they added it to my service plan after claiming that it didn't count. There were many times that my son came to visits with me where he had bruises or scratches in weird places, and DCFS just blew it off, claiming that the reason my son gave for these injuries was just him making up stories. And here is a picture of my son and me. It shows that we do have a bond and we are very close. Not only do innocent parents lose their children because of DCFS, but innocent children lose their lives because of DCFS as well. It is heartbreaking how many children that had DCFS involved in their lives end up dead because DCFS did not investigate their case good enough or just turned a blind eye to the neglect and abuse going on in these children's lives. As I mentioned before, according to Connor Friedersdorf in 2014, around 1,600 children died within 1 year even though DCFS was involved in their lives. According to Tim Beiser, in April of this year, a 4-year-old girl from Dupo, Illinois, which is only about 5 minutes from where I live, was murdered by her own mother after DCFS had been involved with the family since 2015 because of neglect accusations. The little girl would have turned 5 years old not long after her death. If you have ever had DCFS involved in your life, you know what it's like to have somebody controlling your entire life as well as your children's life, and many times it is unfair. DCFS abuses their power too much, and this results in unfair and heartbreaking results for many families. Once a parent has their child taken from them by DCFS, the parent is given that service plan I mentioned before, that they are supposed to complete in order to regain custody of their child. Service plans include things like parenting classes, therapy, mental health evaluations, drug treatment, and more. And from my own experience, once that service plan is close to being completed, DCFS will add more items to the list of things the parent is supposed to do, which makes it where that service plan can never be completed, and the parent will never get their child back. DCFS also sometimes places children in foster homes, and the child ends up being abused by the foster family when their real family was not abusive or neglectful. My own son once told me that his 2 foster brothers punched him in the face, his foster sister choked him, and his foster mother kicked him, spanked him, put him in timeout, and said he was never getting up. I recorded that conversation between my son and me when he told me this, and told my caseworker about it. My caseworker's response to that was that my son was just making stories up. But what if he wasn't? DCFS caseworkers also lie in court in order to make it more possible that they will win the case. For that same reason, they try turning witnesses against the parents, which also happened to me when my caseworker tried turning a woman against me that had supervised my visits and was there as a witness for me. Apparently, my caseworker thought that woman and me were too friendly. DCFS does other wrong things that have to do with the service plans they give parents. I have experienced this as well. As I previously said, I was forced into that therapy that I had already had therapy for what they were sending me for, and was very open and honest with that therapist who was working for DCFS. I have come to find that the service providers DCFS provides for the service plan usually seem to do whatever is in DCFS's favor, even if they have to lie. All of these things that DCFS does wrong makes it hard for them to be trusted with our children, and they need to claim responsibility for their actions and work to correct their actions. Something needs to be done about the many issues that DCFS brings into people's lives that should not be brought into their lives. DCFS needs to be held responsible for their actions when they are wrong. If they are able to punish innocent people, then something should be done about the problems that DCFS causes, especially when it comes to children losing their lives as a result of DCFS ignorance. DCFS makes too many mistakes in child abuse cases as well as abuse their power, and as a result of this, too many children are taken from safe, loving homes. Too many children are left in unsafe, unstable, neglectful homes, and something needs to be done to fix these issues. There are many groups on social media against DCFS and CPS, which is Child Protective Services, in almost every state in America. This tells me that not only is DCFS in my state corrupt, but in many other states DCFS is corrupt as well. After listening to my speech, I hope you will realize the many problems that DCFS is causing in too many lives that do not deserve these problems. And I hope the word will spread about these issues, so hopefully something will start happening to prevent these issues. And this is the logo for DCFS in my state. I really, really hope that this will get out and people will start realizing what DCFS is doing wrong. Thank you.